Hi, hello, I'm Liz. Today I'll be doing a book review, a business book review. It's something I've been wanting to do for a while. I watch a lot of YouTube or booktube videos, which are generally reviews on books, and I predominantly read books across like contemporary or fantasy and sci-fi novels. But I've never really seen a lot of business book reviews. And I remember looking at the book that I'm reviewing today and thinking to myself, oh, I want to see a review of it. Searching for it and not really finding a lot of thorough reviews in the sense of like what people liked about the book, what people didn't like about the book, and that kind of thing. So that's kind of how this came about. I find books very useful in my business journey. I love reading a few business books every year, or books that have to do with not necessarily business, but maybe psychology, topics that I can essentially implement in my business in some way or the other. Today I'll be reviewing a book called Creativity Inc. It's written by Ed Catmull. The subtitle or the continuation of the title is Creativity Inc. Overcoming the unseen forces that stand in the way of true inspiration. That's a bit of a mouthful. So, who is Ed Catmull? He's essentially one of the co-founders of Pixar. That's what drew me in about this book, that it's a book about Pixar and creativity and potentially their business practices. So there's quite a long synopsis on Goodreads that you can go and read. I'll link to it in the description below. But in short, what is this book about? It's about fostering creativity amongst your employees as a leader. And then it offers Ed Catmull's experiences with Pixar as these examples of creativity and leadership. So it's really a book intended for managers, CEOs, people who are heading teams, and how to cultivate and foster that creativity and lead the team. And then of course it takes you through like physical instances of leadership with Pixar and what happened and why it would say this specific instance of leadership is good and this is bad. So what did I like about the book? Let's start there. I really like that it's not a business manual. I don't like books that are written like that. This is not written like that at all. Rather than a business manual, this book I kind of experience as Pixar's biography and how leadership basically, how they behaved and what their processes were when it came to fostering creativity for these big projects like Toy Story 2, Finding Nemo, Brave, So I think if you're a person that needs to kind of follow along with practical examples, this is almost like told in a storytelling manner. So it's like a business book meets storytelling. And that's really what I liked about this book, because that's the way I learn is through practical examples. So this was nice to see it in action, specifically with a company like Pixar. Okay, and without spoiling the book, it's not like there's much to spoil specifically, but obviously you'd like to probably have a really nice reading experience and not know everything and what he leads up to in terms of the principles he kind of provides. The one thing I really, really loved is the brain trust. So this pretty much in the first quarter of the book, you'll learn about the brain trust. And it's essentially this kind of group within Pixar, the leadership group on each specific project. So the brain trust changes. That's something I really liked about it, is that it's not constant. Hey, Docho. The leadership offers guidance and oversight on each project so that to make sure that each project is aligned with everyone going through, and to make sure that the story in each one is what holds up, because that's what Pixar is about. Pixar is about creating amazing stories, so they needed to kind of pull that through every point and every story and every interaction in the company, and the brain trust is kind of there to make sure that happens with each individual project. And then the third thing I quite liked about the book is it's written in a humble way. I don't know how to explain it other than I find that Ed Catmull is quite humble, specifically with a company where like Steve Jobs is involved and the ego of Steve Jobs is within the company, although he wasn't like there constantly, and I think that helped to the success of Pixar. Ed is really humble in the way he writes. He doesn't boast. And these principles are really applicable to any business out there. I do agree with the synopsis that it says that it's, not just for creatives, it can be for anyone. It's just anyone can be creative. That's my belief. So, and we're all creative in different ways in our businesses. So you don't have to be a creative to read this book. That's what I really enjoyed about the book. Also, it's not a difficult read. So it's a nice read, I think, if you want to incorporate it into your general reading. It's not something you specifically have to like feel drained by. I feel some business books you can feel specifically drained because you don't feel it's as enjoyable and you're doing it for your business. This isn't one of those books. It's really enjoyable to read and it's a quick and easy read in my opinion. So other things that I really liked about the book, and I wrote quotes down here, is there's certain like specific themes that are addressed in the book. And one of them is failure. And I think as a business owner, it's so applicable that failure is discussed, specifically when we're looking at successful companies, because it's easy to assume that failure didn't exist for those successful companies. We only ever see the good. We only see the amazing movies that Pixar makes. We very little or very seldomly see any of the mistakes, even if there's maybe like one or two movies that didn't perform as well as the Toy Stories, for instance. That sense of failure, you're not going to know about it because it's all behind the scenes. So the chapter where he discusses failure, it's really phenomenal. I think it will help any business owner help reframe failure as a concept. And again, without giving too much away, the way he reframes it is basically saying that failure is necessary, which I'm sure we've all heard, like the Edison quote on the light bulb, and I didn't fail. I tested and experimented so many times before I got to the light bulb. He takes that approach, but he does it in a next level way, where he talks about failure as a positive mindset, and how you're essentially like allowing an environment of creativity if you're allowing failure to be like a natural part of the process, because then it becomes experimentation and not this heavy downfall, heavy concept that we're all battling with. One of the key quotes for me that really stood out about this is, expecting to fail is a very positive mindset to have. That's basically it in a nutshell. And then he also addresses the idea of ideas, and that not all ideas don't have to be good or bad, and that we put a lot more pressure. We put a lot of pressure onto ourselves by always having these phenomenal good ideas. And he reframes that by saying people are ideas, not like people make ideas, so people are more important than ideas. I actually think that's one of the direct quotes. Ideas come from people, therefore people are more important than ideas. But then one of the things he also says is that, which it's just something I want to point out, so this might interest you more to read the book. If you give a good idea to a mediocre team, they will screw it up. If you give a mediocre idea to a brilliant team, they will either fix it or throw it away and come up with something better. And then within context, it's about the idea that it's about the team, not the idea, and that the people matter more than the idea. And then there's some important kind of things he discusses, like specifically from a managerial point of view, about how to take someone's candor and feedback and obviously see that as a positive thing and not run away with your ego, and how you can kind of detach that from yourself so that it becomes part of the creative process. Yeah. So there's a lot of these kinds of like themes that are dealt with, and they're not necessarily themes that I think, obviously this was written quite a while ago. 2009 was the first published date, I think. So these are not concepts necessarily that I think are entirely foreign and we all inherently know these concepts, but it was nice to read about it within the specific framework of Pixar. What did I not like about this book? So I gave this book a 4 out of 5 star. I think there's like some things I would have liked him to address. Like I would have said, in terms of enjoyability, it's definitely a 5 out of 5. Even in terms of themes that are being addressed, like 4.5 out of 5. But what made it a 4-star for me, maybe as a creative person, I just had a different expectation, so this could be completely biased. But I wanted to see more of the creative process. Like, I felt like I didn't see enough of the creative process other than how the leadership approached each project, for instance, and how they approach certain specific challenging instances like their merger with Disney. Because the book is called Creativity Inc., I think I just had this expectation. You calling a book Creativity Inc., it's got like a Toy Story character on the cover, or a silhouette of a Toy Story character, Buzz Lightyear. And then you don't have a lot of creativity discussions. Like, I know I talk about the creative process. Like earlier I mentioned like how feedback can impact the creative process, or how the brain trust impacts the creative process, how failure impacts the creative process. But he never actually talks about the creative process, like what the impact is. You kind of just have to assume because this movie was fantastic that what he said is definitely like going to work in every single instance with the creative process. So I think I would have liked to see more of the creative process on kind of the execution side of the projects, and not necessarily about how the leadership engaged, responded necessarily. Yeah, I don't know if that makes a lot of sense what I just said, but that was basically the only negative I really had from this book. Who should read it, or why should you read it? I think this book can genuinely be read by anyone within a leadership position. Obviously, that's who the book is intended for. So managers, CEOs, team leaders, that kind of thing. But I'd also say if you're working with creative people and your position is not inherently a creative position. So if you're working with graphic designers, copywriters, artists, project managers, just creative people in general, I think this is a really good book to read from a leadership point of view. And then if you're a creative, I think this is also a really good book to read because it addresses stuff like feedback in the Candace situation, because it addresses things like failure. I think as artists and creatives, that's something many of us face. So just in addressing these types of themes, even if it's from a leadership perspective, was something I found very helpful as a creative. Let me know what you think. Is this a book that you'd like to read? Leave your opinion in the comment section below. Is this a book that you've already read and had certain opinions or perspectives on that were different from mine? I'd also love to hear that. Let's have a discussion. And then if there's any books you'd like me to review going forward, to get more book reviews on the channel. It's something I'd really like to do. Book reviews, obviously business book reviews, or books that would be helpful in business. And then thank you for watching. I can create content that I like on this channel. However, I cannot grow this channel without you. So please, if you enjoyed this video, give me a thumbs up, leave a comment, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification button. Bye bye. See you in the next one.